Hey, welcome back to Gold Scratch. So this is the next episode in the saga about our budget build. That's no longer a budget build. The previous video, if you watched it, exact same engine was completely built and running. I've run it on my test stand. We had it at the dyno, and we sensed we had a problem before we even made one pull. Right after we started it up, we aborted the day. And I want to thank, by the way, my team that was there today, that day. This was last Saturday. Dyno Daryl Waters, of course, who's always gives me great service. And he was the one actually that picked up right away that the engine wasn't cranking easily. And Dave also brought me a nice Holly carburetor to try. Austin Ward brought a Quadrajet carburetor. Not only did he bring Quadrajet carburetor, he brought his whole car. He has a Super Stock J automatic 69 Camaro, 9-second car, and he had the whole car there. It was pretty cool having that. And basically, we wasted everybody's day because we didn't even make one pull. So all the details of that are there. And I also want to thank all the great comments on my channel. You know, it's kind of Alex's idea. What are we going to do? Everybody's expecting a video about the dyno run, and we don't have one. Let's tell them what happened, and that's what we did. We fessed up and told you the whole story. First time ever I've had an engine, that didn't make it through the dyno. Fortunately, we didn't make a pull. We didn't do any damage. The only damage was to the thrust bearing itself, and that's been repaired. Before I go further too, I need to make a shout out to all those folks down in Florida that are going through a terrible experience right now. We watch it on the news all the time. And Florida is one of my best favorite places in the world. I have friends and relatives down there. I took my kids to Disney World many times. I've been to Daytona and Smyrna. I even drove at Smyrna Speedway one time. And I lived in Bradenton, Sarasota area for 6 months once. So favorite place in the world, and it's just devastating to see exactly where I lived actually was in the eye of the storm. So thoughts are with everybody down there. I know I got lots of followers in Florida. I get lots of comments from them, and I hope you guys get through that. It's not fun. So back to the engine. So a week ago we were at the dyno, and once again we sensed something was wrong. Boarded the day, brought the engine home, took it totally disassembled. We made a video about that, and the thrust bearing was tight. And fortunately, the only damage done really was on the thrust bearing itself. I could have actually cleaned it up, just changed that thrust bearing, put it back together, and it probably would have run fine. But when you get bit by something, you want to make absolutely sure that you don't get bit again, and you go beyond in the other direction, because a budget build by definition is an engine we don't take to a machine shop. We use mostly stock original parts, clean them up. I power washed this block initially at my own shop. I got a high pressure power washer. I got all the Moroso brushes and all that stuff. I've done it many times without any problem. I hand honed it, and we were very, very confident that it would have been fine. And then the thrust bearing issue showed up. So once again, thanks for all the nice comments. I did mention that I only had 3/1000 of an inch clearance on the thrust bearing. 3 to 11 is the range, so I was at the minimum side. From now on, I'm not going to be happy with the minimum. I'm going to get in the range. So I felt I can come in here closely. One of the things we want to show you, we took this block to the machine shop, had it hot tanked, jet washed, acid dipped, de-rusted, pretty much everything you can do to it. We also, it was a stock borer before. Now we bored it 30 over. I got brand new hyper-eutectic pistons, brand new Eagle rods. I put that all together already with ARP rod bolts. So my customer, Paul Phelan, bought the engine from me, but he kind of wanted to upgrade it anyway, so this gave us an opportunity to do that. We took it to the machine shop, had all the processes done to it. We also decked the block 25/1000 of an inch. And so it was a 9.1 or 9.2 compression engine. It'll be about 10.1 or 10.2 now, with the decking the block and going to flat top piston instead of 4-valve reliefs. These pistons have, I think, 5 cc's of combustion chamber volume, so rather than the stock ones, which are probably 12 or 14, something like that. So it's going to make more power. It's going to be a better engine and more reliable. And one of the things we're going to make sure is we don't have another truss bearing failure. Here's how we're going to do that. In the demo, I'm going to show you, first of all, for those that, there's engine builders making comments on my channel, giving me, and when I say I learn from you guys, man, I mean what I'm saying. And if you're watching this video, read the comments too. You'll learn as much as you will from watching the video. Lots of smart guys with lots of experience weighed in instead of had the same thing happen to me. Here's the reason. And we're looking at everything, by the way, for what it's worth in terms of the cause. But one of the things I did go ahead and assemble it, even though it had 3 thousandths. That was the minimum of the range. And now, just to demonstrate for people that haven't seen this before, we're going to kind of show you how the truss bearing works if you're not familiar with it. So Alec can come in here a little closer. The top half of in the case of a small block Chev, the truss bearing is integral with the rear main. Now, in some cars, some engines it's in the front main. In some engines, the truss bearing is actually a separate bearing from the bearing journal, from the main journal as well. But this is the way small block Chevs work. And so the top half, always the top half of the bearing is the one with the groove in it. That's how the oil gets fed to the bottom half. Some bearings have a groove all the way around for specific reasons. These don't, so obviously the top half in order to get oil in. But this is the truss flange, so this is the other half of the bearing. These two halves are actually interchangeable. And this surface has, it's an alloy with copper and other things in it for wear resistance. And here's how it fits on the crankshaft. So if you just want to be a little closer, Alex. Oh, so I'll pick that guy up. For those who haven't seen this before, and this is actually a way you can check your truss clearance even before you assemble. In the previous video, I did show us checking the truss clearance on Tony's engine as a demo, but and when it's in the engine, you can use a dial indicator, but when it's not, we're using a feeler gauge. So we've already kind of played with this a little bit. That's the 7th thou. So 3 to 11 is the range. So if I take my 7th thou, and that's one surface, so it fits in there pretty good. Pretty good. In the tightest spot, it still fits in. It varies a little bit, but we're pretty close to 7 thou combined on the two sides. So that's probably what we'll see. And when we get the engine together, we'll follow up and sort of validate that point. So we're not going to have a problem this time. Now, when it happened, like I said, I could have just changed that bearing, cleaned it up, and got going. But once hurt, you don't take any chances. We took it to the machine shop, had it cleaned, and Mark's a master machinist, Mark Atchison's, and took a look at it, and he said, I recommend that you resurface the flange. These two surfaces here on the crankshaft are what rubs against that truss bearing, and in order to do that, we had to, this was a standard journal before, now it's 10 under, so we're going to use 10 under bearings, of course, and we have to recheck all our clearances. That's how your truss works. Now, one of the things you have to worry about, especially with I guess an automatic tube or the manual transmission car, first of all, when you bolt the transmission in, you have a pilot bearing in here, and the transmission shaft goes in. If it's pushing on that crankshaft, you're going to have a pretty short life on that truss bearing. It's just made to handle sort of the float in the engine, and if you have a clutch, whenever you step on the clutch, you're putting pressure on that truss bearing, right? So that's another thing to be aware of, and so that's why you have to have a clearance there. So it's very important if you're installing a manual transmission with anything other than OEM parts that you check that measurement. So, hope you found that helpful. We're going to go from here now. It's going to be a brand new build. I've got, as I mentioned, new everything basically for this engine. We had it decked 25 thousandths of an inch. It's bored 30 thousandths now. The pistons are 30 over. New cam bearings to go in, new frost plugs to go in. Got to paint it again. Now this is Friday. Up until about Wednesday, we're actually hoping that we might have it back in time. We have a dyno date with Daryl tomorrow on Saturday. And by the end of Wednesday, I realized I wasn't, and I had to call it off. Hated to do that because Daryl's a busy guy, and so basically he's gonna have a weekend off that he didn't plan. Daryl, you're welcome. So that's the way that worked out. We were pushing to get it ready. In a way, I'm kind of happy it worked out this way. Now I can take my time. You hate to rush anything. You know, if we had to race tomorrow, we would do whatever we have to do, but we don't. So now we're going to take our time, and we'll show you more about this build. It's going to be a little different build than it was before. New pistons, new eagle rods, more compression at 355 instead of 350. So hope you found that helpful. I hope, you know, thrust bearings are something that I'm certainly guilty. It's usually fine. Very, very seldom I've ever had to do anything. If you don't have enough clearance, by the way, and I mentioned this in other videos, you have to take both halves of the bearing shell, clamp them together, and take, if you're short a couple thou or whatever, take a couple thousandths off that thrust face in order to make up that clearance. So I've only had to do that a few times out of many, many engines. So it's something that, you know, you can take for granted. It's usually okay, but in this case, you know, it wasn't. I got caught. And so, and thanks for all your support in the comments. I much appreciate it, and it turned out to be an okay week. Once again, please like and subscribe. We're still growing. We're doing good. We're enthusiastic about Gold Scratch videos. We got lots more to do for you. Okay, yeah, my son's coming down. By the way, if you're in Canada, happy Thanksgiving. This is Thanksgiving weekend. I know in the U.S., I've been in the U.S. many times on Thanksgiving weekend. It's I think the second Thursday of December, just before Christmas. But if you're in Canada, this is Thanksgiving weekend. So I got my little boy and my little girl coming down. Mike and Marie are coming down for the weekend on Sunday, and Mike's bringing his engine back here. I built an engine for him for his Michigan Modified last summer, if you followed any of that, and he just got it in time to get into 5 races. He won 2 of them, got 2 seconds and a third out of 5 races. Fast qualifier every night, so the engine worked pretty good. But you know, because we have all winter, I told him bring it back, and we're going to do a little tear down and inspection. I might change, put a different camshaft in it. Looking for ways. It makes enough power. That's not the issue. It's where it makes the power, and I might modify that by different camshaft dimensions. So we'll be talking about that as we get into it. And please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching Gold Scratch.